A very good morning. You're watching FYI. I'm Rishika Badwa. India is in the first week of its COVID vaccination program. Slowly and gradually, we're learning more and more about these silver bullets with each passing day. According to the government so far, and this is good news, 0.38% of those who've already been vaccinated have reported adverse effects to the vaccine, and 0.002% out of these have actually been hospitalized. But here's what we'll focus on today. Both the Serum Institute of India as well as Bharat Biotech have issued a fact file and details of who should not get the COVID-19 vaccine. On FYI today, we'll examine this fact file for you. We'll put out the list and we'll also ask our panel of experts why. So, what should you mention to your healthcare provider? According to the Serum Institute of India fact sheet, if you have a severe allergic reaction after any food or drug or vaccine, you should tell your healthcare provider. If you have allergic reaction to any of the Covishield ingredients, if you have a fever, if you have a bleeding disorder or you are on blood thinners, if you are an immunocompromised person, if you're on any kind of a medication that affects the immune system, if you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, if you're a breastfeeding mother, or if you've received another COVID-19 vaccine. So these are basically, according to the Serum Institute of India, terms and conditions that you need to specify to your healthcare provider. Bharat Biotech has also released a separate fact sheet. Their fact sheet talks about very clearly when not to take the Covaxin. The Bharat Biotech fact sheet says, opt out if you have a history of allergies, opt out if you have a fever, opt out if you have a bleeding disorder, if you have used blood thinner drugs, or if you're an immunocompromised person. You also have been asked by Bharat Biotech to opt out if you use drugs that affect your immune system, if you're pregnant or a breastfeeding mother, if you've received any other COVID-19 vaccine, and opt out if your vaccinator suggests that you should. Now, a lot of what Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute have said is common. It's almost the exact same fact sheet that both the Bharat Biotech and the Serum Institute have put out. But what does this mean for us? What does it mean for the common man? What are the drugs that you need to be watchful about? What is the information you need to provide to your healthcare provider in order to prevent any kind of adverse reactions from happening? That is what we will focus on in this edition of FYI. We'll try to look at some of those big questions on who should not get the COVID-19 vaccine and why should they not get it. We have with us Dr. Sushila Kataria, Senior Director, Internal Medicine Department of Medicity Medanta, has been given the Covishield shot already. We also have Dr. Padma Srivastava, the Chief of Neuroscience Center at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. As you know, she's been participating in the Covaxin trial. She's also a part of the phase 3 clinical trial for Covaxin. We'll also be joined by Dr. Shekhar Mande, the Director General of the CSIR. And we have with us, right, okay, so that's who we have with us at the moment. But let me begin by asking you, Dr. Kataria, you have been given a shot of the Covishield vaccine. This entire fact file that has been put out by Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute, is this something that is information that was, that was available to you before you were given the shot? Were you asked all of these questions?
Thank you, Rishika. Yes, all these questions were already part of any vaccination program actually. So these are the questions which is asked when somebody goes to take any vaccine, be it hepatitis B vaccine or a chickenpox vaccine, or now it is COVID-19 vaccine. And we had the full information on both the vaccines before we started our vaccination program. And yes, I went through the checklist and then I took my vaccine 4 days back.
Okay, so you were given the entire checklist. You, of course, presumably satisfied all of the conditions, and that's why you were administered the COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Padma Srivastava, I want to ask you, among the big questions that are being asked right now is who should not get the vaccine, and there is a long list of people. When you say that if you have a history of allergies, you should not get the vaccine, break it down for our viewers. What are the kind of allergies that we're talking about that they need to, either inform their healthcare provider or just completely opt out of taking the vaccine?
Thank you, Rishika. If I may start, can I mention about 3 points before I answer that? So, the first thing was that about the data the collection of the data to be able to answer all these questions. And the data comes out of the trials, and we've had problems in recruiting that amount of number of volunteers for that data. So therefore, you have the questions being raised because you don't have adequate data. That's number one.
Right.
And number two, and an aware society would want answers without actually being contributing to it. The allergies, as you're saying it, now we've had this astronomical numbers who have undergone the data analysis of both Pfizer and Moderna. In spite of that, you had these, side effects and all. They are also, sort of tweaking as to who would get. And now you have the elderly and very frail who probably should not be vaccinated. That came after, after a marketing surveillance, which came after the rollout. Sure enough, emergency rollout, but they had rolled out. The third important thing here is that even for a flu vaccine, which we administer every year, the flu vaccines, which most the elderly, the comorbid keep taking, they also record reactions.
Okay.
Now, the thing is that we are looking at with a microscope and recording everything transparently. So even if somebody sneezes after a vaccine, it's getting recorded. Unfortunately, our numbers are much less. The fourth point, Ruchika, is that India is in a very critical juncture.
Yes.
So we've not seen the second wave yet. And so looking at the track record of this unforgiving, the virus, we probably are very critically poised to be able to...
Dr. Srivastava, you're raising an important point, because what you're saying is that this fact file should have been made available before the rollout. Even though this is an emergency use authorization, we're actually seeing some of this information come out after the rollout, which is potentially dangerous. I want to take, Dr. Kunal Sarkar into the conversation at the moment. He's a cardiac surgeon from the Medica Hospital in Kolkata. Thanks so much, Dr. Sarkar. The predominant question that a lot of our viewers have actually asked is on the issue of, blood thinners or blood coagulation issues. Is the vaccine, both Covaxin and Covishield, safe for those who are on blood thinners? Because that's a very large section of our population as well. People who are predisposed to heart conditions.
You see, you're absolutely right. So far we were not really aware that people who've been on blood thinners, which have become very, very common and very, very prevalent for people with heart disease, with or without stents and bypasses and stuff like that. We were not aware really that those would confirm to be contraindication. But I think a concern comes from the fact that there has been a couple of cases of the mRNA vaccine, especially the Pfizer, the Moderna one, in which unfortunately, it was a physician who died of a bleeding complication somewhere in Florida about 2-3 weeks back. And that has created a huge racket, etc. A lot of questions are being asked in the United States. So some of these questions, you see, these are early days yet. There is hesitancy and dithering, not just from people. There are also hesitancy and dithering from the companies.
Yes.
So companies are also a little bit, learning on the job. They are picking up some of the side effects they see here and there. And as we have already said today, that they are kind of putting it on the fact file. But I really think, it would be far better that if they came up with a little bit more succinct and comprehensive data, and they produced their fact sheet based on data rather than individual blips.
Okay.
Because there is no safe highway in the world.
Right.
Even the best road is going to have an accident.
Okay. I want to ask you a very straight question, Dr. Sarkar. The vaccine fact file very clearly says, the Serum Institute says that if you're on blood thinners, you need to inform your vaccinator or your healthcare provider. And the Bharat Biotech fact file actually very clearly says opt out if you're on blood thinners. So the question that a lot of our viewers are at the moment asking is, one vaccine going to be safe for those with blood thinners and perhaps one vaccine not going to be safe? What are you recommending to your patients, heart patients who are on blood thinners especially?
No, honestly, so far, we are also a little bit mystified and confused by this. We would have never, because you see about 10 lakh people undergo heart procedures in India every year. And if you probably see the number of people who are on just medical treatment, there would be more than 1 crore every year for one kind of cardiovascular problem or the other. So if we really are very picky about picking up people who are on any kind of blood thinners, that would exclude a significant part. That will exclude almost 1% of the vaccinable population. So I don't think that's a very practical, we are almost throwing out the baby with the bathwater right now. So we need to do a little bit more research and say that should you have any history of bleeding problems, GI ulceration, gum bleeding, etc., over and above the fact that you are taking a blood thinner or two, that may be a cause of alarm. But people, by and large, taking an aspirin or, one other type of, a couple of other types of blood thinners, it really confuses me today. As I told you, more than 1 crore of Indians every year are on this form of treatment or the other. So it will be very unkind to brush them off and say that, look, you're not eligible for a vaccine. That will be very, very draconian.
Dr. Kataria, prima facie, yes, sorry, Dr. Padma, you wanted to come in.
Sir, yeah, just to add on to what Professor Sarkar said, because as a neurologist, we have our stroke patients. That's another huge chunk. Would be on aspirin or, one of the blood thinners. And then we also have the rollout after the healthcare workers are the 50 plus individuals and also the 50 minus who have comorbid. And the comorbid are the ones with heart disease, cancers and strokes.
So,
and
Dr. Padma, I'll ask you then as a doctor, would you prescribe either of the vaccines to patients who are on blood thinners at the moment, given these advisories?
No, at the moment, no. Since until I have more clarity, I cannot say that. And as Professor Sarkar said, now that's actually weaning out a huge proportion of people who are actually on the rollout next after the healthcare workers.
Well, this has indeed been a revelation, and one that not a lot of people are actually aware of or talking about at the moment. We're also being joined by Dr. Shekhar C. Mande. He's the Director General of the CSIR. Thank you so much, Dr. Mande, for being with us. Let me quickly get you into this conversation as well. We're talking specifically about this eligibility criteria, which has been released by both the Serum Institute of India and Bharat Biotech. And we're specifically talking about patients, with neurological disorders or cardiovascular disorders or any other kind of disorders, which puts them on blood thinners. Do you still believe that the vaccine, either of the vaccines, is going to be safe for the population of the country that's going to be on blood thinners? As we had Dr. Sarkar pointing out, that's going to leave out 1 crore of people a year if we can't vaccinate those on blood thinners.
See, as a first approximation, I would like to believe that it is safe. But, in any vaccine trials which are done, any new candidate that comes in, we talk of something called efficacy, and so we call something called effectiveness. Now, efficacy is actually measured on the control population on which the vaccine trials have been conducted, right? And those numbers are typically what are put forth. You would have heard that the Oxford AstraZeneca Serum Institute vaccine is about 70% efficacy, or the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are something like 95% efficacy. Now, efficacy numbers are tested on people with very clear inclusion and exclusion criteria during trials. But the effectiveness we get to know only once the vaccine is being administered to many different people in the field. Actually, vaccine rolls out all around the world. That's not true only with Bharat Biotech or the Serum Institute, but any other vaccine candidate that you have seen around, whether it be Pfizer, Moderna or CanSino, all those, the effectiveness would be only known as we start rolling out. And if at that point it emerges that there are certain kind of populations which we need to be careful about that, we will have to actually take a note of that. At this moment, I am not very sure where we stand on this, so it will be difficult for me to comment on blood thinners or neurological disorders and things like that.
Right. But Dr. Mande, the fact that both the Serum Institute of India and Bharat Biotech have put this out in black and white, they've released fact sheets about the vaccine in which they've spelled it out very clearly that if you are immunocompromised, if you are on drugs that compromise your immunity, or if you have coagulation issues or you're on blood thinners, then Serum Institute says you need to consult your healthcare professional, and Bharat Biotech very clearly says opt out of the vaccine. Dr. Mande.
So a priori immunocompromised thing can be rationalized, and once again only this hypothesis and not an opinion that I'm expressing. The hypothesis would be that the purpose of a vaccine is to elicit immune response in human body, right? So you're actually trying to simulate something which looks like the virus, either a small component of it or the whole virus, and you're making individual competent to launch an immune response when that individual actually sees the actual virus. But in immunocompromised people or those who are on drugs which actually compromise one's immunity, it is likely that immune system may not actually gear itself up. So that hypothesis can be suggested that maybe with that point of view might be rational. But once again, these are not an opinion that I'm actually expressing based on any of the facts. I will have to actually look at the facts and then only comment.
So you're saying it is a bit of a wait and watch at the moment. Dr. Sarkar, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point, and that point would be that, you see, if similarly with immunocompromised, because so far you would think that the immunocompromised are the people who should be quite high on the order of getting a vaccine.
Yes.
So somewhere the understanding is becoming a bit topsy-turvy, and a little bit of it may be due to the fact that we haven't been neither clear nor very robust on the indemnity coverage of the companies. So the more you vaccinate, are the companies being very protective? Because they're getting a bit scared of the fact that if they don't have adequate indemnity cover, then you and I can just go on slapping cases and complaints and God knows what.
That's a very important point. Yes.
So and the biggest immunocompromised subset are the diabetics.
Yes.
So,
I have a list of FAQs and a lot of our viewers have actually asked a whole bunch of questions. It's going to take us perhaps a couple of shows to address, all of those questions. I'm going to try and squeeze in as many as we can. But Dr. Kataria, you had a point to make, and then I will list out some of these very specific questions to our experts. Dr. Kataria.
Yes, I wanted to come on this bleeding disorders and injections. That's how I read it, because bleeding disorders is a heterogeneous group. And anticoagulants is also a lot of, it's a broader group. So I do not think that aspirin and clopidogrel itself would disqualify a person not to have an injection. We should understand these are intramuscular injections. So if somebody is on warfarin or some other stronger anticoagulants, it can lead to a big hematoma formation or a local blood collection at the intramuscular site.
Right.
Or somebody has a very, very low platelet count. So I think the company should clarify, and per se, in my opinion, use of aspirin or clopidogrel should not disqualify for getting this vaccine.
Okay.
Secondly, on immunocompromised, if somebody is controlled on diabetic, that doesn't make him or her very immune compromised.
Yes.
Somebody who has been on steroids long term, more than 20 milligrams of prednisolone, or other stronger medication, or somebody HIV with low CD4 count, we can consider them significantly immune compromised.
Right.
But somebody merely having diabetes is not immune compromised.
Okay, so I want to actually put some of these specific questions. And Dr. Kataria, if I can begin by asking you, I'm going to put out a couple of these FAQs and get our panel of experts to answer them one by one. Should diabetes patients get vaccinated when it's their turn?
Absolutely, 100%. If there is no other contraindication, if their platelet count is okay, they do not suffer from any severe bleeding disorder, and I think they must get vaccinated.
All right. Dr. Srivastav, you had something to add?
No, I would agree with that. But the only thing is that when a company puts out this in black and white, and everybody is able to see that, then these questions will be there in everybody. Rishika, it's very difficult for a person to accept. When they say blood thinner, a blood thinner in quotes also includes antiplatelets. As Professor Sarkar said, aspirin, clopidogrel, ticagrelor, all of them would come as blood thinners. So company also needs to clarify.
Right.
Before, as an individual doctor, you can say that, oh, you're fine. Because you can't be 100% sure, even if it is a 0.002% chance of an incident, that incident is the incident for that individual. Okay. That changes.
Dr. Mande, the other big question is now, there is a lot of doubt on whether patients with comorbidities should get the vaccine. Is it safe for them given the fact that they will be the target in the phase 2 of the vaccination drive?
So as of now, there is no indication why they should not be given a vaccine. And indeed what you say are the people actually who are more susceptible to COVID. Probably they might be looking forward to receive a shot as well.
But is it safe for them?
As of now, there is no indication that it is unsafe. Till today, so many different people have been vaccinated. As yet, no indication has emerged that it is unsafe. So we'll have to once again wait till some evidence emerges.
Okay. Dr. Sarkar, if I can come to you, of course, the advisory says that patients with blood thinners should consult their healthcare professionals before they get the vaccine. Why is it? can you explain to our viewers why is it that patients who are on blood thinners, at the moment should either consult their healthcare professionals or opt out of the vaccine? Why is it so?
You see, first of all, we need to make a little distinction between, there is a difference between somebody having a bleeding disorder and somebody being
yes,
on
of
a
course,
blood
they're
thinner.
two different things. Yes.
Yeah. So blood thinner does not mean you have a bleeding disorder. But should you be on a blood thinner, you've received an injection, etc., you may be a little bit prone to forming some bleeding problems here or there, which generally, as far as we knew so far, that fever, muscle pain, etc., were more associated with vaccines, but bleeding problems were very, very few and far between. So let us wait and see. Frankly, I think that we probably are overreacting a bit. And as we vaccinate more, as we see and analyze more of the side effects, some of our anxieties will be allayed in the near future.
Okay, so very, very quick answer, Dr. Sarkar. Is the vaccine therefore safe for heart patients?
Well, I think it should be. For heart patients, diabetics, etc., it should be. Absolutely.
Dr. Padma, would you say the same for patients with neurological disorders?
Absolutely, because that actually is the cohort who need it, since they're going to do badly if they get infected. You're choosing between corona versus vaccine. I would think that this cohort needs it. It just needs a little more clarification from the company side.
Okay, but you are putting that rider that more clarity is still needed, right?
Yeah, and I think that would be true with everybody. But this is the group who need the vaccine also the most.
But because you've also participated in the clinical trial, Dr. Srivastav, has the vaccine been tried in these section of people who have comorbidities or are immunocompromised, heart patients, diabetes patients? Do we have that clarity on whether the vaccine has been tried in these subsets?
Yes. So in the phase 3 trial, in fact, the entire group with comorbid 50 plus, in fact, my father is 89 years old. He's also been given the shot. So again, I'm coming back to this. It's a randomized trial, so we don't know what we got, a placebo versus vaccine. But the phase 3 trial, all these groups have been included. So that data will also give you a lot of clarity.
Dr. Kataria, the other question is, who is an immunocompromised person? If you can list out the criteria that put you in that immunocompromised category.
So immunocompromised is a person who is per se because of any infection or just because of the genetic disorder, they have not sufficient immunity. So the people, just to enumerate, would be people who are having HIV infection with very low CD4 count. People who there is a condition called combined immune deficiency syndrome, which is a genetic problem. People who are on medication like long-term steroids, taking for more than 2 weeks, equivalent or more than 20 milligrams of prednisolone every day. People who are on other immune suppressant like patients of kidney, liver transplant take it, which is called MMF and cyclosporine and azathioprine.
So, very last question.
Or somebody who has a very uncontrolled diabetes.
Okay. What about those with breathing disorders, asthma patients? They're supposed to be the most vulnerable set. Is the vaccine safe for them?
I think vaccine is safe for them. Asthma patient who is not taking regular tablet form of steroids, they only on inhaled corticosteroids, they are absolutely safe and would not be considered immune compromised.
Dr. Mande, I'd like to give you the last word. Would you just like to summarize this? There has been a fair bit of confusion. A lot of doctors still say it's a wait and watch, it's work in progress. How would you like to summarize this for our viewers? Who should and should not take the COVID vaccine? What's the advice that you'd like to give them?
I think what I would like to say is that by and large, the vaccine is very safe. People should go ahead and take the vaccine. If the doctors advise looking at a person, for example, that it has been advised that pregnant women should not take the vaccine.
Yes.
That's all of us know, and that's a very clear advice that has been given, and people have been told not to do that. So go purely by doctor's advice. I think nobody knows better about human physiology than the doctors themselves. So go by your doctor's advice and then do take the vaccine. Vaccines till now have been known to be safe. There are no real major adverse reactions that have come forward.
Yes.
So we should be prepared for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think, I'd really like to thank all you doctors for sparing your valuable time and answering our questions so very patiently. I think the word of advice here that's coming from all of our healthcare experts is that do consult your doctor if you have any doubts. Don't rely on misinformation, on WhatsApp forwards, on what you read on social media, and don't go out Googling everything to try and draw your own deductions. Speak to your healthcare professional before you do indeed sign up to get vaccinated. Thank you all so much for joining us on this edition of FYI.